Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Gregorian. I'm the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's meeting, and I especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a DEC member yet, please allow me 10 seconds to myth bust. There's no nomination process, no application process, and no job level requirement for being a DEC member. We're simply looking for people that want to build their networks and learn from thought leaders like the one you'll hear from today. You can sign up at econclub.org. As we get started, just kindly silence your cell phone so we do not disturb today's program. And certainly, one of the many traditions at DEC meetings, we always love to begin by honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask you to stand and join me. And the flag is to my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And kindly remain standing as our invocation today will be delivered by Friar David Pruce from the Solanus Casey Center.
God of heaven and earth, you call us to social and spiritual values. May we run our economy well and take good care of our businesses, while also being attentive to the dignity of all humanity and respect for the earth. May we never lose sight of how our actions will affect future generations. Oh God, grant us wisdom in all of our decision-making. Amen.
Thank you, Friar Pruce, and please be seated, everybody. A quick but important thank you to Detroit Public Television and Lawrence Technological University for partnering with us on today's live webcast. And certainly, if you've been with us before, you know we love having high school and college students with us at every single meeting. Today is no exception. We had 80 students with us. They started their day with a private Q&A session with Mr. Forbes, and we had a terrific session. I wanted to just take a minute and let you know the students that are with us, so please hold your applause till the end. We've got students from Melvindale High School, compliments of Jim and Kelly Services. Madison High School, thanks to Claude Molinari and ASM Global. St. Clair College, thanks to Andy Storm and Eckhart Industries. Livonia Franklin High School, thanks to Strategic Staffing Solutions. Troy High School, PNC Bank, thank you, Rick DeVore. Catholic Central High School, thank you, Chris Baker and the great folks at Barnum. U of D Jesuit Cubs, thanks to Jason Tinsley and JP Morgan Chase & Co. And finally, University of Windsor, thanks to Brian Schultz at Michigan Cat. So please join me in a round of applause as we welcome our students and thank their sponsors. And I also want to say a very special welcome to former DEC CEO Beth Chappell, who's up here at the head table. Hello, Beth. Always great when you're with us, so thank you. A couple things on your tables. One is our sponsor brochure. Please take a look at the brochure. Patronize these businesses. If you're part of one of these sponsors, we thank you. You are the reason we can continue to bring great programs like today's. Also on your table is our season lineup. This week, we'll be at Lawrence Tech University for another one of our continuing professional development breakfast series, where you will learn how to lead change across your organization. Those things are expertly delivered by the great folks at Lee Hecht Harrison. And also on January 28th, a DEC meeting that we recently announced, we'll be hosting Michigan Supreme Court Chief Justice Bridget Mary McCormick and Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. Their program will be talking about jobs and justice. And as always, watch for more meetings to be added. And it's always fun to take a look back at DEC's 86-year history of speakers and tell you who spoke on this specific date. Well, Mr. Forbes, you are the 11th speaker in our 86-year history to address the DEC on this date, January 13th. However, today I thought it was compelling to let you know you are the 6th person with the last name of Forbes to address the DEC over the years. And you might recognize Malcolm Forbes, who addressed the DEC in 84, 87, and 93. And the other person with that last name is yourself. Your previous visits to the DEC were in 97 and 2014, and it's always an honor to host the Forbes family once again today. So thank you for being here with us. Okay, 3 quick technology-related items. Today we're piloting a way for DEC members to use technology to help build your network. I hope you've taken a minute to download the Plain Sight app and check into this meeting. With this app, you will see skills and interests of the people around you in real time. And you just never know. Your next great hire or contract resource might be just a table away. So check it out. Do let us know what you think during this pilot stage. If you're a tweeter, we want you to tweet today using @DebtEconomicClub. And finally, one of the more popular elements of DEC meetings is we want to hear from you in the final 15 minutes. You can submit questions via your smartphone. Instructions are on your table. And those questions will make their way to our presiding officer, who I'm about to put to work. Peter Provenzano, Jr. is Chancellor at Oakland Community College. He's a board member and a great friend to the DEC and a huge supporter of many things in our community. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Provenzano, Jr.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon. It's my privilege to introduce today's speaker. Steve Forbes is the chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. His newest project is the podcast What's Ahead, where he engages the world's top newsmakers, politicians, and pioneers in honest conversations that are meant to challenge traditional conventions, as well as feature his signature views on the intersection of society, economics, and policy. Steve also writes editorials for the Forbes issues under the heading Fact and Comment. A widely respected economic prognosticator, he is the only writer to have won the highly prestigious Crystal Owl Award 4 times. In both 1996 as well as 2000, Steve campaigned vigorously for the Republican nomination for the presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a very warm Detroit Economic Club welcome for Mr. Forbes. Now, before we hear from Mr. Forbes, I'd like to turn your attention to the video screens on each side of the room. We have a 2-minute teaser of the documentary In Money We Trust, which was broadcasted on PBS last year. The documentary gives an insightful and illuminating answer to the question, what is money? Based on the book Money by Steve Forbes as well as Elizabeth Ames, the film features 25 notable financial experts, economists, and authors from around the world, including Mr. Forbes. Let's take a look.
More than in the past.
The declining value of the dollar has greatly affected people.
The truth is, many Americans feel their money isn't going where it could, their household is kind of short.
But it's not just money that people are afraid to trust. Studies are showing trust in society, institutions, in government is lower than ever before. How did we get here? Why is there less trust in money, in society, and in each other? The answer lies in understanding the one thing that both unites us and divides us: money.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Peter. Thank all of you for being here today. You can find the film, if you didn't see it, on public television, on inmoneywetrust.org, inmoneywetrust.org. That'll be the commercial of the day. But it is a great pleasure to be here today, especially in Detroit. We at Forbes have been amazed at the comeback of this city. That's why we chose Detroit. We did it in October, held our 30 under 30 summit, where we had over 9,000 people, young people from around the world, almost 60 countries, come here at the end of October. And we're coming back to Detroit in October of this year and in October of 2021. I've been asked today to make some observations about the economy and elections. That's one reason why we did the documentary a little over a year ago. There's a feeling in the country, even though we're doing well economically, things still aren't quite right, and people can't quite put their finger on it. But this year in the election, we're going to have one of these unusual elections in the United States, even though this campaign has started rather in an uninspiring manner. No one would confuse it with Greek philosophers debating life, or with the Lincoln-Douglas debates or anything like that. But there are going to be very basic questions. The most basic one of all is, what kind of country do we want for the future? We've had these debates before. We had them in the 1850s, before the Civil War. We had them in the 1890s, which people don't really recall today. But back in the 1890s, in the early 90s, the country was in turmoil. There was great anxiety about the future of the country. We had massive immigration, far higher proportionally than today, rise of big cities with corruption, seemingly unstoppable corruption, a stagnant agricultural sector, and also a feeling of what this country was going to be. There was a historian from Wisconsin, a fellow named Frederick Jackson Turner, who wrote a paper in the early 1890s about a circular that came out from the Census Bureau based on the 1890 census. And what the Bureau said was, the American frontier is closed, that the era of free land is at an end. And as this, what Turner called the frontier thesis, as it gained circulation in the country, it really set off an intense anxiety debate. With the closing of the frontier, would we just evolve to be a country like everyone else? The feeling was that people came here, they moved west. You'd always go west. You could start over. It led to more and more democracy. You take Wyoming, for example, had women voting 50 years before the Constitution, had it nationwide, and people learned to be self-sufficient. And was all this going to come to a close now that the frontier was officially over? The upshot of it was, yes, we did have some changes. The rise of big corporations, trusts they call them at the time, led, of course, to the antitrust movement, epitomized by Teddy Roosevelt. But it turns out that the pioneering spirit wasn't dependent on land or moving west. It was what we now call entrepreneurship, pioneering of the mind, creativity, innovation. But we're having one of these debates today. And it's going to be already seeing it. What kind of healthcare system do we want? What kind of education system do we want? What is America's role in the world? And let's start with the economy. As I mentioned, the economy overall is doing well. Unemployment is the lowest, as you know, in nearly half a century. Among minorities, it's at record lows. We have more job openings than we do people who are unemployed. Wages are going up, especially for low-income workers. Very hearteningly, new business formations have recovered. After the disaster of 2008, the recovery in new business formations was very, very slow. But in the last few years, it has picked up very remarkably. And what a lot of people don't know is that the group in this country that is creating more new businesses than any other group by far is the Latino community, but nobody covers it. What has also happened in the last few years is the rise of African American businesses being created, independent businesses being created. So the creativity in this country is there. And the poverty level, lowest in 17 years, 6 million people, fewer people on food stamps. Stock market, we all know how well that is done. Now the big overhang, though, has been trade. And I'll make it clear, since I'm not running for anything, I'm no fan of tariffs. Tariff is another word for sales tax. It's a sales tax on American consumers and American businesses. Now, I believe that in terms of dealing with the trade abuses from China and from some others, I think there are more laser-like approaches you can take, going after specific individuals, specific companies that violate things. We've never consistently enforced our trade rules in the past. We can do so now. The great arbiter of trade disputes is what they call the WTO, the World Trade Organization. We win 85% of the cases we bring there. If it needs to be modernized, and it does in the digital age, the last modernization was in the 1990s, certainly due for one now that can take care of those who abuse the system, have found loopholes in the system. But that's what we should be focusing on. And I think you do that, you'll get just as much result in terms of dealing with those abuses than putting on tariffs, taxes on each other. Now, China's more hurt by tariffs than we are. Thanks to deregulation and the tax cut of 2017, the tariff wars have not been too harmful to the economy, but they have taken a toll. Instead of growing at 3%, we're growing a little above 2%. Why? Because investment. If you don't know what the rules of the road are, you're less likely to make long-term investments. You've got to know what the parameters are. Now, thankfully, the tax cut of 2017, which allowed instant expensing of investments, has helped ameliorate the uncertainty, but has certainly taken a toll. Looks like CapEx, as they call it, capital expenditures, is now beginning to rise again. Hopefully that'll take place. In a couple of days, we'll get phase one formal signing of a deal with China. The USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, hopefully will pass the Senate after this impeachment trial. I was hoping they could get it done before the impeachment trial, but in a few weeks that will finally get passed. Hopefully we'll avoid a trade war with Europe. There's already talk about putting on 25% tariffs on auto parts and auto imports. The industry is very much against that. People don't fully realize how integrated the supply systems are in manufacturing today. And the abuses, as I say, we can take care of by taking a laser-like approach at the actual abusers. And in terms of China, in terms of their misbehavior, you go after those who do things wrong, you will get a response by whether it's sanctions. You take a bank that is behaving in a rogue way, you kick them out of what they call the SWIFT system, where they can't do international payments anymore. That's the death knell. So there are tools in our kit that can be used to deal with specific abuses. As hopefully as these trade wars subside, we'll get a pickup in investment in the second half. But another overhang, of course, is what I mentioned, the election itself. What kind of country will we be? What direction are we going to go after these elections? And the debate, as I mentioned, rather an uninspiring start, I do think, though, is going to lead to some fundamental debates. Let's start with health care. What kind of health care system do we want? Should it be imitative of what they have in Europe and much of the rest of the world? Should we continue to do what we're doing, or is something else going to evolve? The administration has some initiatives in terms of pricing, transparency, and the like. But this then gets, though, to a very basic question. Why do we have a health care crisis? The short answer is, well, people like me are getting older. We want more health care services. And so, therefore, prices go up. You have an affordability, availability problem. But then step back and ask yourself a very basic question. Why is demand for health care considered a problem, a crisis, whereas demand for anything else in this economy is considered a great opportunity? People want more cars and trucks. If you people in this town and elsewhere would be glad to help you out. People want, see, I got a pander, but I know where my free lunch came from. But you know, people want more apps. A lot of writers glad to help you out. So what's with health care? Why is demand in any other part of the economy considered a great opportunity? In healthcare, oh my God, what a disaster we have. The basic reason is nobody designed this system. It evolved for a variety of reasons, but the system doesn't have real free markets. It's basically still all third party. It's not patient-doctor, it's third party, whether it's insurance companies, where most people get their health coverage, Medicare, Medicaid on the government side, perhaps some large employers, but it's all third party. A hospital knows that its revenues depend on how well it negotiates with insurance companies for reimbursements or how they deal with Medicare, Medicaid, not with how they satisfy the patient. Again, trying to scapegoat this, that, or that is not going to work. We should realize what the problem is and then try to correct it, which is already beginning to start to happen. But to see where the patient lies in that food chain right now, all you have to do is realize this. The lousiest motel in America wouldn't dare put you in a room with another guest, a sick guest with a curtain in between. Think of it. They just wouldn't do it. Or those robes they sometimes give you, that look like they've been washed by the Salvation Army 10,000 times. You need an instruction manual. You put it backwards, forwards, big, too small. No spa would give you those things. And then in terms of pricing, because it's all third party, you don't have a real market. And I was telling the kids, a friend of mine in New Hampshire several years ago had a heart condition. So he goes to the cardiologist and asks, among the other things the cardiologist said, you should have what they call a nuclear stress test. I told the kids how they come up with the names for these things. I don't know. But what they do is they put a little radiation in a liquid and put it in, see what it, I don't know. But anyway, it was one of the tests. And so the guy asked the doc, he says, well, how much does that cost? Doc says, I have no idea. Insurance will cover it, maybe, but don't worry about it. Well, this guy, being an entrepreneur, therefore not taking things as they are, went out, he gets involved in healthcare, and he goes to 25 different clinics and hospitals and pries out what the prices are. Now, the test is done the same everywhere, so it's not as if one institution does it differently from another. And the prices ranged from $1,450 to $7,300. Same test. Now, if you had a normal free market, that would not happen, especially in the age we live in now of instant communication. So, end of the story, the guy goes back to the doc, and the doc says, good Lord, I had no idea it cost that much. And so, true story, he gets up, the doc does a few calculations and says, with your particular condition, there's less than a 2% chance we're going to get any useful information. Let's just drop it. Not worth it. That's what happens. And part of the problem, too, when you have third party, you try to do everything top down instead of organically coming from people's needs and wants in the marketplace. Take, for example, electronic records. 25 years ago, every gas station in the country had electronic records. Every retailer had electronic records. You had to do it or you wouldn't survive. Didn't happen in healthcare. Why? Because there's no competitive advantage to doing it. Finally, somebody says, let's have electronic records, how good they would be. Not have to read Doc's handwriting anymore. Yay. And so they impose it from the top and create a lot of problems. And this top-down approach is why CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has to issue 11,000 pages of regulations a year, trying to cover things that normally be done in the normal course of people interacting with supplier and consumer. And so in terms of healthcare, there may be some very good ideas, but warranties, for example, guaranteeing that a certain procedure, if it doesn't work, you don't pay for it. Like you buy a lemon, you're covered by a warranty. Well, why didn't you get warranties? Because there's no advantage to it. Geisinger, a hospital chain in Pennsylvania, did it, but they were an outlier. So and then people say, well, let's have government control everything. Problem with that is the Europeans found out it hurts innovation. Europe was once a great font of new drugs, new medicines, new medical devices. They went to a more rigid one-payer system and crushed innovation. That's why most of the innovations come from the United States now instead of being more spread around the world. However, big changes are coming. And if we don't muck up the environment, what's going to happen is we're going to see an Uber, Lyft-like disruption, or the kind of disruption that hit my industry with the invention of the internet. But what you're going to see, huge changes coming because of something that's happened, and it's already beginning to have repercussions. Most employers now, for insurance, provide insurance that have high deductibles. Now, many of them cover it, help you cover it with health savings accounts, which are becoming more and more popular, giving you more and more control of resources. But what has happened is people are now paying more out of pocket. Even though official medical inflation is not very high, people are paying more than they ever did before, or at least getting charged for it and hoping they have something in their HSA that can cover it. So they're becoming aware of what this stuff is beginning to cost, and that's beginning to create a market. You're already starting to see the rise of services, sort of a medical versions of Priceline and Expedia. What does something cost, like that nuclear stress test? And why does an MRI cost 10 times as much at one institution versus versus a tenth of what it does at another hospital? These things are beginning to happen. And what that means is as you get that kind of consumerism, you're going to get automatically both productivity gains, because suddenly there'll be an advantage to doing it, and you'll get more innovation. There's a lot of innovation in healthcare, but we're going to get a lot more. You're going to also, as the Trump administration's pushing posting of prices by insurers and by hospitals, that is very good, but it's going to be the pressures of the marketplace that do it more than decrees from the federal government. And so if you want to look at the future, look at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. It's an institution in Oklahoma started by a couple of anesthesiologists several years ago, and their big thing was they don't take insurance. No Medicaid, no Medicare. Private insurance, by law, they have to take some of it if you insist, but they urge you not to. They post all their prices online. So if you want knee surgery, they give you all the things so you don't get bills 3 years later. They have a fixed price, and if it goes above that price, they eat the cost. So as a result, they are a very lean run organization. They're board certified surgeons, so it's not a quality issue. But even the state of Oklahoma sometimes sends their employees there. Why? Because even though the state won't get reimbursed because it's not insured, they end up saving money because the cost is so much less. Take, for example, a sophisticated kind of sinus operation. They do at the Surgery Center at a normal hospital in the region. Would cost $17,000. There it's about $5,000. Same result. So that's the kind of thing you're going to see in the future. More and more consumerism, but also what we get when we have real free markets, and that is productivity, innovation, and also I think it's going to lead to more effective safety nets. In food, for example, which is more basic than healthcare. You don't have food, you don't have anything. Government is still very much involved in agriculture, but government does not run agriculture. If it did, we'd have no more obesity, because we'd all be starving. They tried it in the old Soviet Union and China back in the 50s, disastrous results. So in agriculture, we have the farmers produce the food, people process, deliver the food, sell the food, and if people have problems getting it, you have everything from food banks to food stamps to deal with it. You're going to see, I think, eventually the same thing evolve in healthcare, where you get consistent safety nets, but also more for less. Now, we'll get very spoiled from that very quickly. You take, for example, handhelds, which are amazing. The whole world's at your fingertips. If you try to describe a handheld 25 years ago, people would say, oh, no, couldn't happen. Now, today, if you place a call to Outer Mongolia, it takes more than 6 seconds to say, what a piece of crap this is. What's taken so long? What's taken so long? So in terms of big things happening in healthcare, you're going to see a debate on what kind of system we have, but I think what's going to emerge if we allow it is a totally different system than either what we had before or what you find overseas. For example, one of the things that's going to happen is in terms of drug pricing. Why do the prices keep going up? Well, because you feel it more now that you have these high deductible plans, so you're feeling that more than ever. But as you know, with the system we have today, it costs about $2.6 billion to bring a new drug successfully to market, because you have to cover all the failures that you have beforehand. This should be a trade issue. Right now, the reason why Canada and others can sell these drugs so cheaply is they don't pay for the development costs. With all the subtlety of Tony Soprano, they in effect tell pharma, you don't sell at a low price, we'll steal the patents from you. And so they get a free ride. They should share in the development of these costs. We shouldn't eat that $2.6 billion ourselves. Those who buy the medicine around the world should share in that. PBMs, pharmaceutical benefit managers, middle person, that's where 40–50% of the price is. Let's have some transparency there. And drug manufacturing, it's amazing. Drug manufacturing, how we manufacture drugs today, is still in the dark ages. We think of pharma, very cutting edge and new stuff, but the way they manufacture their pills and medicines, it is way antiquated. That's beginning to change. Some entrepreneurs are going to be changing that in the next few years. But right now, as a result, because of these ancient ways we do things, there are 121 critical drugs that are in short supply. You talk to oncologists, they're facing some real critical shortages, some of the medicines they prescribe for their patients. So these things are going to change. Another thing you're going to see is the end attack on cons. That's certificates of need. If you want to start a facility, expand a facility, start a new service, in 35 states and DC, you have to get permission from the government. Now, does Starbucks need permission to open a shop next to Dunkin' Donuts? No, you just do it and see which one wins. Got to get more flexibility, free market there. So in terms of health care, there'll be a debate, but look for what's going to be creeping up is not whether the same with some reforms or Europe with maybe some tweaks. It's going to be something emerging totally new, which is the virtue of free markets, which Frederick Jackson was worried about back in the 1890s. That kind of pioneering entrepreneurship is going to do something that is going to be very exciting. This, of course, leads to taxes. Amazingly, on the Democratic side, they're all proposing taxes. Even described moderate like Joe Biden, he's got tax proposals that increase taxes at least $3.5 trillion over the next 10 years. That's more than twice what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. That now counts as moderate. And you look at Warren and Sanders and all their tax proposals. What they don't understand in terms like a wealth tax, it seems these people have a cartoon caricature. Some of you may be old enough to remember Scrooge McDuck, a comic character from Disney. He'd sit in his money bin with all his cash and jewelry and gold bars and all that kind of thing. They sort of think wealth is like the cash. You just go in and help yourself to the cash. Most wealth is not ready cash. Most wealth is asset, like a house or a factory or a patent or a way of doing things. And if you have an environment which is antithetical, which is hostile to that kind of environment, those asset values go down. So you take Jeff Bezos, post-divorce, still worth $120 billion. I like it how some say, well, she could have gotten more. Well, a lawyer who can get you $46 billion in divorce settlement, not bad for a few weeks' work. But anyway, another subject, another time. But $120 billion that you have out there, $120 billion. If suddenly he can't operate his business the way he has, you could see the stock fall in half. That $60 billion goes poof. That's not cash like Scrooge McDuck. Those are asset values. And if you have an environment hostile to asset creation, asset values, that stuff disappears very quickly. So I hope that they learn that in terms of taxation, more is less. That when you have a lighter regime, and history shows this, there's a book out called The Magic Formula, shows over 4,000 years, you can find it online, written by Nathan Lewis, that countries, states that have stable money and low taxes always do better than those that don't. Even if you look at Sweden or Denmark, held up as an example of what some think we should be in this country. They created their initial wealth by having that benign environment. Then they went in the opposite direction. What you don't read about is Sweden's retreated from a lot of the stuff that Democrats hold up that they want to do here, including death taxes. Sweden does not have an inheritance tax. Sweden allows school choice, for example. So you got to examine these things. But anyway, what this gets to is my favorite hobby horse, that is the flat tax. Sadly, the Republicans aren't going for it this time. But the tax code, as you know, is a horror. If you add up the tax code, not just the code itself, but all the attendant rules and regulations, it's 10 million words and rising. Now, the Bible, which took centuries to put together, is only 773,000 words. So 10 million, nobody knows what's in it. The IRS doesn't know what's in it. You call their hotline. If they answer it, a third of the time they give you the wrong answer, hold you responsible for it. Several years ago, Money Magazine did a survey. They took hypothetical families' finances, gave the numbers to 46 different tax preparers, experts in the field, and you know what they got back? 46 different returns, 46 different estimates what the family owed, some cases thousands of dollars of difference. This code brings out the worst in us. Half the lobbying in Washington revolves around it. It's corrupt, complex. I think we should do is what 30 other countries have done. Just get rid of it and start all over. I'd put in a simple flat tax. You'd have exemptions for adults and for children, that's it. A family of four, for example, their first $52,800 of salary free of federal income tax, only 17 cents on the dollar above that. No tax on savings, no death taxes. You should be allowed to leave the world unmolested by the IRS. And you would have a more vibrant economy, and it's a moral issue. You go back 20 years, the IRS estimates we spend 6 billion hours a year filling out tax forms. Experts tell us we spend $200 to $400 billion a year complying with this monstrosity. Just go back 20 years. Take those literally tens of billions of hours, over 100 billion hours, literally trillions of dollars, and imagine if those resources, instead of going for this idiot code, had instead gone for creating new products, new services, new medical devices, new drugs, how much better off we'd all be today. You end up raising more revenue. So what's not to like? Let me close, and the Republicans are talking about tax cut 2.0, tax cut 1.0, despite making hopelessly complicated pass-through provisions, but it was pretty good tax thing coming out of Washington. They're talking about 2.0, we're reducing the tax rate for middle-income earners from 22 to 15%. I hope they go much further than that. But if you look at Europe, there's so many closed taxes on Europe. How does Europe pay for its free stuff? Now, Bernie Sanders is honest. He says he's going to hit the middle class with more taxes. He's honest about it. In Europe, they help pay for it with a VAT, which is a super sales tax. In most states, sales taxes, cities, 5, 7, 8%. In Europe, a typical VAT is 20 to 25%. So you buy something for $100, you're going to end up paying $125. What they love about it is the way they do the VAT is that it's hidden in the cost. So you don't see the breakout unless you requested of what that 25% sales tax. Payroll taxes in this country, they call it FICA, the tax you pay on your paycheck for things like Medicare and for Social Security. In this country, the total rate, employer-employees, 15.3%. Typically in Europe, their payroll taxes are 35 to 50% off the top. Their income taxes are higher. Where they do better is corporate taxes, but you can see nothing is free. They pay for it one way or the other. And so let me just close on another big issue, which of course is education. We have a scandal there, $1.6 trillion of student debt. And so college was once seen as a propellant for upward mobility. You get that degree, by golly, you got a better life in front of you. Now you end up graduating. If you graduate, many students don't graduate, even within 6 years, they end up with something, a mini mortgage, and they wonder where they go from here, which reduces their flexibility. I was telling the kids earlier that a guy who worked on Wall Street once recommended to graduates, he's asked, what should we do after college? He said, don't take that highest paying job. You're young. Do something different. Do something like go to China and teach English for 2 years. They're always looking for English teachers. You'll learn a lot, both about a different culture, about the world, about doing things on your own. Be a great thing. You're young enough to do it. But if you have debt, you can't do those things. Much less flexibility into discovering what you're good at, what your talents are, and you only learn that from experience. So how do we get this debt? For all the most beneficent reasons. It came out of World War II. One of the great things we did after World War II was the GI Bill of Rights, which paid for college for millions of veterans. Really one of those programs that worked. But unfortunately, the way it's evolved, and again, nobody designed it this way, ended up where the more aid they put in, the higher the cost went. And so I think what you're going to see in the future is a whole new different way of education. It's not just going to be everyone doing the 4 years or 6 years or whatever they do now. You're going to have some doing it more and more in 3 years. You're going to see more and more institutions try to adapt what Purdue is doing. They've got a new president, Mitch Daniels, 7 years ago. He's frozen tuition now for 7 straight years. He made a deal with Amazon and getting cheaper textbooks. Today it costs a student entering Purdue less than it did 7 years ago, even though he's hired more tenured professors. So it can be done. And also what you're going to see is more and more certificates of proficiency. So a lot of people aren't going to do them 4 years because they can do it online. Starbucks, for example, has a very innovative program with Arizona State where baristas at night can get a college degree over a period of time and work during the day. You're going to see more and more of it. You're also going to see, finally, in this area, a real debate about what is education. Part of it is a proficiency, but also the goodness of learning humanities. Learning for the sake of learning. And so you're going to have a combination. Yeah, you're going to be practical, but also there's going to be a new appreciation of developing that mind. Because I told the students in closing, I asked the question that so many have others asked, like Tom Sowell and George Gilder and others, what is the difference between us today and people during the Stone Age? Same planet, same resources, same appetite, same human body. The difference between them and us is we know more. We have more knowledge. So even if you have a physical disaster, whether from war or a disease or whatever, you can recover if knowledge is not destroyed. And you saw it after World War II. Devastation in Western Europe and Japan, tens of millions of people killed. People thought it'd be generations before you'd get recovery. Well, with the U.S. military umbrella, within a handful of years, Europe and Japan exceeded pre-war levels of production. Why? Because knowledge was not destroyed. You knew what to do and you could rebuild. Key to moving ahead is getting more knowledge, whether it's entrepreneurs in the marketplace or laboratory or scholarship, whatever the source. Getting that new knowledge is how you move ahead, which is unpredictable. You can't predict what you're going to find or how things are going to turn out. But Steve Jobs made the point that humanities and sciences are not opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. You must do both. And so I think you'll see a new appreciation, both for being more practical, but also the virtue of learning and trying to make yourself that better person that the Greeks talked about. So in conclusion with this election, a lot rides on it in terms of what kind of future, but even though it may look a little discouraging now, we've had these debates before. We'll probably have another one in 40 or 50 years, but what is amazing about this country is we always find a way to renew and move ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. We have a few questions, and we have about maybe almost close to 10 minutes to go through some of these questions. Let's start with a student question first. Are you ready? What will be the short-term and long-term impacts of autonomous vehicles on our economy?
Well, first of all, despite all the publicity, we're still a long ways from reliable autonomous vehicles. Turns out that it's a very complicated thing. You go back to the beginning of the auto age. Oh, you just put a vehicle on a truck, on a bed, and voila, a wagon, you have an automobile. No, very, very complicated, very different thing. So I think what you're finding in autonomous vehicles more and more is you got to start from scratch and not try to take what exists and put a lot of software and hope it works. But so short term, uneven, although you'll see some progress. But the reason that it's going to take off, eventually they'll get it right. The reason it's going to be a boon is because people of my age, one of the things you dread as you get older, will they take my license away? Will I lose that mobility? Now, with an autonomous vehicle, you just say, I want to go here. You don't have to worry about having that license. So it's going to be, in that sense, a great liberator as they bring this technology along. So as I get older, not old, but older, I'm all for that.
About one of our most popular questions, what do you think the Republican Party looks like 5 and 10 years from now?
If I knew what anything looked like, other than more wrinkles 5 or 10 years from now, I'd be on the Forbes 400 list, richest people. But I think what you'll see is what often happens. You'll find a blend of what he's introduced, what the party has done in the past. I think hopefully it'll be, maybe this is me wishing, more appreciative of free trade. That is being the ability to sell with each other and putting the emphasis on enforcing existing rules. So we don't have to avoid putting sales taxes on ourselves. But the other part, in terms of opportunity, restoring patient control in healthcare and the like, having a tax code that allows us to focus our brain power on more productive things, I hope that's still part and parcel. And also recognizing that, like it or not, we have to be very much part of the world. And that doesn't mean we try to make everything perfect in the world. We should have learned by now that's not going to work. But making sure the bad guys in the world don't feel they have a free run everywhere, that's also important. And like it or not, we're the only country that can lead those forces against the bad guys. The others just don't have the capacity to do it or the trust. Even though everyone may hate the US, they say, but the bottom line is they want us there, especially if there's trouble on the horizon. Whoever would have thought, who grew up in the 60s, 70s, that the people who want us most in Asia now, involved in Asia now, Vietnam. They're right next to China. They've dealt with China for thousands of years. They know what their neighbor can do. They had a war 40 years ago, a brief one. And so they want our presence there as a counter. Now, China, as it grows economically, of course, will be a dominant power there, but it's quite another having a dominant economic power than what they feel, and I'm telling you what they tell me, a bully. They don't want that. They want the trade, not the overriding politics.
It looks like we have time for one more question. In your opinion, what three things made this country so great?
What made this country great? One is freedom. Came from England, Holland, and then England. Even when we were colonies of Britain, we had a large amount of autonomy. And this ability to have learning self-governance was critical. It's one reason why we grew faster than the rest of the world in North America. Going back to the 1750s, 1760s, before we had the Revolutionary War, there was a great rivalry at the time between French North America and British North America. And after what we call the 7 Years' War, we call it the French and Indian Wars, 1750s, 1760s, one reason why the Brits triumphed was that the population of British North America, because Britain had such a loose and haphazard colonial policy, they'd sometimes be overbearing, other times they'd just ignore us. Our population was over 2 million. French North America was 60,000 because of the rigid control from Paris. So that freedom. But also, key to that was the belief you could reinvent yourself. What Frederick Jackson Turner talked about, the idea you could move, you could recreate yourself, start over. The past wasn't going to hold you back. The future was yours. It was in your hands. That's what we call the pioneering spirit, entrepreneurial spirit. Can do, self-improvement, whatever name you want to give to it, that was critical. And the idea too, which dovetails with the freedom, is that ultimately consent has to come from the governed. Consent has to come from the governed, which means the rule of law. This is critical because if you're an entrepreneur or you want to do something that challenges an existing power structure, in many societies they will crush you. Just one quick example, China, 500 years ago, had shipbuilding capabilities every bit as good, or some say better than those of Europe. But the authorities there decided they didn't like this exploration that some of these Chinese sailors were starting to do. They broke the ships up, even though they're very advanced, told the sailors, if you ever try that again, don't come home because we'll put you to death. You can ply the waters inside China, but don't dare go outside them. China cut itself off from the world. Europe surged ahead, and we're living with the consequences of that today. So that ability to be free of rule of law and freedom to challenge existing power structures, that's critical to moving ahead. Otherwise, you stagnate.
Great. We like to save the last 5 minutes of each lunch for our lightning round series of short answered questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Something on your bucket list.
I'll still say it, but I'm not sure the arthritis is going to allow it. Throwing an opening pitch of a baseball game. Okay. I may have the catcher 2 feet away, but still dream of it sometimes.
Person other than a family member you would like to have lunch with?
Right now, I'd like to sit down with Pope Francis and have a discussion, philosophical discussion on, given his background, on markets, on how an economy should work. So it'd be give and take. Maybe learn from him, maybe he might learn something from me. I'll at least give him a free subscription to Forbes.
One of your favorite songs?
I guess one of them, Nothing Profound, Hey Jude, by the Beatles, or Heroes, David Bowie, written after the fall of the Berlin Wall. I like those.
Good. Favorite team growing up?
Favorite team growing up was the Dodgers. Then they moved, and I became a Yankees fan. I shouldn't say that here, but I'm all for the Tigers unless they play the Yankees. How about leaving it that way?
Your best sport? Baseball?
No, I love baseball, love following baseball, but I had a little bit of capacity at tennis. Right now it's bicycle riding. I enjoy that. It's easy, and hopefully no one's going to run me over, but I enjoy doing it.
Last book you read?
Last book I read was by a fellow named Richard Snow, S-N-O-W, called Disney's Land. Just came out a few weeks ago. It's about how Walt Disney created Disneyland. And we think of amusement parks today as no big deal. A lot of people have them. But when he conceived of Disneyland, amusement parks are considered garbage. They're dirty, bad food. They cheated on the games of chance they had there. And it was utterly disreputable. And it's an amazing story about his concept of it, both from when he entered it, the flow like a movie, all the rides they invented. Inventing a ride is hard enough. They invented every single one they did. And it was a miracle it got done, nearly destroyed the company financially. He cocked his life insurance, borrowing from executives, and but instead it made the company. But he bet everything on his vision and made it happen. Quite a story.
One of your favorite movies?
Favorite movies? Well, I always liked Braveheart. There was a documentary that came out about a year ago from Peter Jackson. Remember Hobbit and all that? It was a documentary called They Shall Not Grow Old. It was an amazing feat. It's about the British Army in World War I. And the colorization he was able to do, the recreation of sounds of the equipment at the time, extraordinary technical achievement, stirring about this greatest man-made disaster, and it was the men who did it in 1914, 1918. But a stirring documentary. You can find it, I think, online, YouTube, so many things today. And I shouldn't mention it, but I will. Where's the exit? I did enjoy Ford versus Ferrari. Yes, and then one that got no play at all, which I thought was very well done, was Richard Jewell. Very well done.
Favorite vacation spot?
Detroit. No.
In the wintertime?
But no favorite. I can go anywhere, enjoy something new.
How about describing Detroit in one word?
Opportunity.
Fantastic.
It's here.
And one of our favorite questions, advice to your 25-year-old self.
Just a reminder, you're 25, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to, and the only way you learn is by going out and trying. And sometimes you'll look foolish, but if you don't try it, you're never going to learn. And every successful entrepreneur or leader has gone through periods where they look like idiots. Things just did not work out. And so be easy on yourself, explore, but don't think you arrive into the world full-blown. Your education, when you get that degree, is just beginning, just beginning.
Great advice. Mr. Forbes, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one quick announcement before we adjourn. If you like today's program, there's 4 different ways you can experience it. Again, you can download the audio podcast tomorrow, where you download your favorite podcast on your phone. You can watch the program on DEC's or Detroit Public TV's website, or watch on C-SPAN. If you're an Xfinity customer, you'll find it on demand in the Get Local section. Now my chance to say thank you. Steve Forbes, thank you for your thought leadership and for traveling to Detroit again to be with us. We always are pleased when you can do that. Thank you. Another round of applause for Mr. Forbes. Peter, thank you for being an important part of today's program and for your time and talent. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today on time, every time. This meeting of the Detroit Economic Club is now adjourned. Thank you.